Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so in a nutshell, Zephyr is an untraceable, over-collateralized stablecoin protocol. So what this means, well, it's my belief that this is crypto's true killer app, okay? So Zephyr's created the world's first truly private, decentralized, and over-collateralized stablecoin that also generates highly competitive, sustainable yield. More on that in a sec. On a foundational level, right, Zephyr is a hybrid. It's a hybrid of two battle-tested giants like Monero and the ZEPH protocol. And we'll jump more onto that in a sec. Back to 2021, 2022, right when Luna was having its heyday. Just give me a sec before you jump down my throat. So although Luna and UST, right, it ultimately failed, what it did show was that there was a desire for a decentralized stablecoin with yield. There was a massive desire. It was so massive actually that both Luna and UST had a combined market cap of around 60 billion at their peak. To be absolutely clear, Zeph is not another Luna. In fact, it's the opposite. I'll explain how in just a sec, but here are some key areas I want to run you through today. So first, we've got the foundation, right? So we'll tackle that Luna comparison head on, and we'll talk about why Zephyr is built for safety and stability. We'll look at the assets, and so we'll break down those 4 tokens that make the ecosystem work. And we'll jump into my killer thesis, my killer app thesis, why this combination of features is really the holy grail for crypto. We'll also touch on the yield and where it comes from, why it's sustainable, especially when so many others aren't. And we'll talk about the future as well, what we have cooking in the pipeline. So we'll talk about the adoption flywheel and the upcoming ETH bridge that will tie everything together. The first thing, I guess, to understand is how Zephyr's stablecoin, ZSD, is backed, right? So unlike those algorithmic mint burn tokens like Luna, ZSD is over collateralized and it's crypto backed. So it's built on, a rock solid foundation of Monero. Monero has been battle tested for over a decade now, and Zeph expands upon this code base, and it adds huge economic utility to the king of privacy. But if we address the Luna ghost, okay, so Luna's UST was an algorithmic stablecoin. So it tried to maintain its peg by printing more of its base token, Luna, out of thin air. And ultimately, this created a death spiral. As the stablecoin lost its peg, the protocol minted infinite Luna and, it destroyed the value and collapsed the entire system. But Zeph is actually the antithesis of this. So Zeph, it's a crypto-backed model, much more similar to MakerDAO, where DAI is backed by assets like ETH, but with some crucial improvements. So if you want to mint $1 worth of ZSD, you have to lock at least $4 of Zeph, which is the base coin, in the reserve. So it's a collateral ratio of a minimum of 400% before any new stablecoin can be issued. And so this is a massive buffer. So if Zeph's price crashed by 50%, say, and the ratio was at 400, the reserve is still 200% over collateralized. So the buffer, it's what protects the peg, and it gives users the confidence that their ZSD is redeemable for $1 worth of Zeph, even in a black swan event. There's many variables and mechanics at play. We actually have some really cool video content and Twitter threads that really get deep in the weeds, so be sure to check them out. But anyway, that's a quick overview of how the stablecoin is backed, and I wanted to address that right at the start because I think that's the burning question on most people's minds who aren't familiar with us. But yeah, next we can take a look at the assets in the ecosystem. Okay, so we have 4. So first off is Zeph, and this is the native coin of the protocol. It's very similar to Monero as XMR. So it's proof of work, it's private by default, and it has huge utility in that it serves as the base coin and the collateral for the entire system. And then we have ZSD, which is the stable dollar. This is pegged 1-to-1 with the US dollar, and it is, of course, fully private. And yes, as mentioned, it's over collateralized by Zeph, locked in the protocol's reserve. And then next up, we have the Zephyr reserve share, okay? So you can kind of think of this as like a leverage position in the protocol's growth and success. So the ZRS holders, they're the reserve providers, okay? So they provide the stability for all the circulating stablecoins. And you can actually mint the reserve share by adding Zeph to the reserve, but you can only do that when the reserve ratio is below 800%. And that 800% cutoff is so existing reserve holders don't get too diluted. But if the market price of ZEPH increases, the actual collateral ratio can go well above 800%, which it has in the past, and it makes it even more secure. The big thing with ZRS is it has multiple incentives. They're rewarded in 3 ways. So ZRS holders, they benefit from the protocol's excess equity. So, as the reserve grows from ZEPH price appreciation, the value of ZRS shares grows actually disproportionately. So it acts as a leverage exposure to the ecosystem success. They also receive 30% of every block reward, which is paid in ZEPH. And so this is a constant protocol reward that's issued to provide stability. And they also capture all conversion fees. So any users minting and redeeming, those fees go to the ZRS holders. They take on the most risk, right? So therefore, they're going to be rewarded the most. And then the 4th asset, which is the latest introduction, it's just been operating over 1 year now. But this is the Zephyr yield share, and it's the yield-bearing token. So ZYS, it represents your share of a separate yield reserve pool. And to get it, you have to stake your ZSD and you'll receive ZYS in exchange, okay? All right, so you have a yield reserve pool, and it's actually constantly growing from 5% of every block reward. So the protocol is it's automatically taking that 5% and it's instantly converting it into ZSD, which is deposited into the pool. So basically this means that your yield is accrued in actual USD terms, and crucially, not a volatile farm token that you have to dump and realize gains. Like you see so many like yield farming things and it's like, 1,000% APY. But it's, at the end of the day, it's just something that's going to be dumped and the price is going to plummet within weeks, if not days. But anyway, I digress. When you unstake, you redeem your ZYS, right? And you get back your original stables plus the yield. And of course, that all depends on how long you've stayed in the yield reserve, how many other users are competing, and also the underlying price of ZEPH itself. Oh yeah, and last but not least, there's no lockup periods for the yield. You can enter and exit whenever you like. So that's pretty cool. All making sense so far?
It sounds good, bro. He wants to know if all the algorithms are Monero algorithms for each one of those.
It's all random X. So yeah, it's all based on Monero's code base. It's just adding, extra utility on top.
Is it 4 separate forks?
No, it's one. So every asset in the ecosystem is inheriting ring signatures, bulletproofs, all the privacy features of Monero.
When you make a fork off XMR, you're essentially forking a unlimited supply of whatever you're creating, right?
Well, sort of, not quite. It's so ZEPH started obviously at 1, and it will have a total of 18.4 million total supply, and then after that, it's tail emissions, and I think Monero has the same concept with tail emissions, and that's just to incentivize miners in the network, so they have a reason to keep mining and securing, right? Because I think the big discussion around things like Bitcoin is one day, years from now, 21 million is going to be mined, and then it's like, well, where's the incentive? Because your miners aren't going to get paid out. So it'll be tail emissions, and I think it's like 0.6 ZEPH per block, which is every 2 minutes. So it'll go up, but very slowly, but at least it provides some economic incentive, right? But yeah, 18.4 million is the total. And I think we're at about 10.5 million at the minute. But anyways, I'll keep running along with this. So
yes, sir. Yeah, go ahead, continue, bro.
When you put it all together, I think ZEPH really is doing something that no one else in the space has even come close to. So, we're decentralized, we're private with stability, and natively yield bearing. So decentralization speaks for itself. No single entity can freeze your funds or blacklist your address. We're all on top of that. Privacy, no one can see your balance or your transaction history. I think especially the pirate fans here understand that. And the stability. Now, here's a really cool feature. So because ZSD is pegged to the US dollar, we actually have a reliable medium of exchange. And as great as Monero is, and other privacy coins, I would argue, do they actually have the best use case as a currency you can use day to day? I would actually argue that they're more of a store of value, which we also have that kind of asset, as you remember, which is called ZEPH. It's just got a fair bit more utility than Monero. And the cool new thing is it's natively yield bearing. So we provide some of the most competitive returns in DeFi while also being sustainable. So this actually ties into the adoption challenge, which we can jump into just now. The initial concept for ZEPH was simple, right? Untraceable digital cash. And I think this was, and it is, it's a noble cause. Real cypherpunk roots, digital financial liberty, all that good stuff. But there was a problem. So it became apparent that to gain widespread adoption, people needed more. Privacy alone is a powerful feature. I think everyone here can appreciate that. We're sort of on the more fringes of mainstream crypto, perhaps, but for the wide majority of people, financial incentives speak much louder to the broader market.
This is more of like the cash in your pocket replacement, the fiat dollar replacement.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, it's like you say, it's like a store of value more than a sort of day-to-day currency exchange.
It's a replacement for that green dollar in your pocket.
Yeah. So this is where the idea for stablecoin yield actually came in. So it was the missing puzzle piece for adoption. So now Zephyr has one of the strongest incentives in all of crypto. Now we've got unbeatable, sustainable stablecoin yield, which is, I think, key to bringing people in to actually use private digital cash. Now, it was introduced just over a year ago, and it's actually performed incredibly well so far. So the yield is variable, right? So it ebbs and flows according to the market conditions. It's actually a balance of the underlying ZEPH price and the amount of ZYS holders who are competing for the yield, right? So that's actually what makes it sustainable. So last year, it actually returned a total APY of 68%. That was from October to October. So that not bad. In fact, it's better than not bad, I think. It actually blows other DeFi giants out of the water. So you can look at Aave.
That's an extra turn.
You can look at Aave and Compound, right? So I think they deliver, it's between 3 and 11% last time I checked on lending stables. But, you've got numbers like that, and I can imagine there's immediate skepticism. So you're thinking, okay, 68% APY, cool, sounds like another Luna. But again, it's the opposite. So our yield does not come from inflationary tokenomics. You can probably just pay attention to the right side of this screen at the moment because I can appreciate there's a fair bit of words going on. But yeah, it comes from...
Let me read it, bro. It says yield flow, because no one's going to see what you're posting on the show afterwards. So it says on the right side, guys, it says yield flow, mining blocks goes to 5% block reward, goes to mint new ZSD, goes to Phil's yield reserve, and then it goes to, it's a flow chart going down. It goes to appreciates ZYS value. And maybe you could explain what each one of those are about.
Yeah, exactly. So the yield is coming from real external value, okay? So which is generated by miners who are securing the network. So 5% of that block reward, it's going to ZYS holders, and that's the newly mined ZEPH, which is created from pure proof of work energy computation. So you have to remember the yield is a permanent feature of the protocol's operation. So as long as miners are mining ZEPH and securing the network, yield is being generated for those ZYS holders. And the APY, right? So the yield will actually fluctuate with the price of ZEPH and the number of people who compete for it. But the actual mechanic of the yield generation, that's constant. And again, it's always paid in ZSD, not a token that will ultimately trend towards zero. So I might just give you a second. You can digest this page. It's not going to be recorded, is it? But anyways, I know I'm talking a lot about Zephyr's yield here, but I think it's crucial to understand because once you get this, I promise you'll have that light bulb moment and the value proposition here will all click. We'll jump into the flywheel, okay? So the yield mechanism, that's what has resulted in the creation of a powerful flywheel effect. Or in other terms, you can think of it a positive feedback loop. And that's a term, right, that is hyped to death in crypto. Everyone's talking about a flywheel, but I can assure you this is the real deal. This isn't just some shallow hype. So let's break it down. We've got highly competitive yield that will attract users, okay? So to access this yield, they're going to need ZYS. But to get ZYS, they need ZSD, the stable dollar. But to get the stable dollar, they need to buy ZEPH first. And so what happens when they buy ZEPH? It drives up its market price. And then a higher ZEPH price actually boosts the value of the block reward, which means that more ZSD is minted for the yield reserve. Hopefully you're following. And a growing yield reserve increases the demand for ZYS, and then the cycle repeats. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, the more users who get in on the yield, it actually will dilute everyone else's share. But remember, to get ZYS, they're actually buying ZEPH, which is going to drive up the APY anyway. So it reaches an equilibrium at some point, and it creates a balanced system. Actually, on the website, on our official website, the dev has released a really cool yield simulator tool. So you can plug in all these different variables, different metrics, and simulate what yield you might accrue over, X amount of time, and factoring in the different amounts in the reserves and such. So yeah, that is our big draw card for adoption: unbeatable yield.
Does your team face any risks in the technology that they're putting out?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's always a thing with any sort of privacy project. A lot have a bit of a target on their back, as we've seen with Tornado Cash and Samurai Wallet and all that stuff. But so the dev team is anonymous, so they're not doxed, which I think is absolutely correct in this sort of space.
559. As much as that sense, like 40 to back at 6.
Do you know him? Should I mute him? All right.
Yeah, someone was just crackling up. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. I'll jump into we're kind of getting close to wrapping up now, but yeah, the future. So we solved the puzzle piece of adoption with yield, but we still have one more piece left, and that is accessibility. So right now, all the activity is happening on Zephyr's native layer 1 chain. But to truly go mainstream, it's become apparent that we do need to become accessible to the rest of crypto. So the solution is an Ethereum bridge. And we actually chose Ethereum because it's clearly got the largest total value locked of stablecoin liquidity in DeFi. And as Zephyr is a stablecoin protocol, that's the perfect fit. So we're actually currently in the testnet phase of the cross-chain bridge, and mainnet, it's looking like we should be able to launch in the next few weeks. But as you know, with any sort of development things, things always push back. But yeah, it's going to be a game changer. I think allowing wrapped Zephyr assets to be used across the entire DeFi ecosystem is going to be really cool. So
are you telling me that Zeph is going to become a token platform like Binance and Ethereum? Is that what you're saying?
Not quite. So basically, we're launching a bridge where you'll be able to export your native assets. So the 4 we discussed earlier, you'll be able to bridge them over to Ethereum, and you'll have wrapped versions. So you'll be able to access them on any sort of DEX like Uniswap, or even better, Komodo. Wouldn't that be cool?
Okay. Yeah, we're working on it, man.
It'll essentially they'll become ERC20 tokens, and yes, they'll lose their privacy, but it means it'll open up all the sort of doors that any other ERC20 tokens have. So it will remove all the friction of having to go through a centralized exchange, having to set up a native Zeph wallet, having to convert from Zeph to ZSD to ZYS. It'll be straightforward, right? It'll just be a couple of clicks, simple swap, instant access to some of the best yields in the industry, right from the comfort of any Web3 wallet. So I think that's pretty cool.
And you really don't have a finite supply,
I suppose. But if everything is operating, according to plan, and as it says on the tin, it should be locked in a contract, right? So if wrapped Bitcoin, the native Bitcoin should be locked on that side and only be released when the wrapped version is burnt. So it's a kind of similar scenario here. There's no extra minting. It all has to come at the beginning from the native chain. So, you can't just mint it out of thin air.
Oh, okay, I get it. You didn't actually create like 100 million coins and then decide.
No.
Gotcha.
No, so it'll be locked up on the native side, and they're kind of just locked in Zephyr prison. But yeah, so like imagine wrapped ZYS, wrapped ZSD in curve pools being used on collateral being used as collateral on Aave and Compound, and eventually down the line, perhaps as a primary quote pair on a DEX or even a CEX one day. Now there's a whole other rabbit hole we can go down with arbitrage opportunities, but I won't go down that just now. What you need to know is that the bridge opens up Zeph's unbeatable yield to everyone and has all the ingredients to really, I think, bring a tidal wave of new liquidity and new users. So yeah, I'm just going to wrap it up now. Zeph has taken the privacy of Monero and the security of JED, combined them, and it's not just another stablecoin. It's a complete private and sustainable financial ecosystem. So we've solved the adoption problem with unbeatable sustainable yield mechanics, and we're about to solve the accessibility problem with the ETH bridge. And that'll export all this yield to all of DeFi. Yeah, so I've seen Vitalik talking a lot about privacy, which is great to see him waving the flag for that. But I guess
there is a problem that you don't have smart contracts.
Sure, but I guess the big draw card that Zephyr has right now is that we have yield that is only actually made possible by operating on our own layer 1. So this isn't possible with a chain like Ethereum, which is proof of stake. So because we're proof of work and the yield is coming actually from the block rewards, I think that's really our key differentiator there. And then there's a whole ideological argument which could be raised between ZK and RandomX and Monero's approach to privacy, which is continually being built upon. So they've got full chain membership proofs launching imminently at some point, which Zephyr will inherit all those updates.
But when we bridge to Ethereum, we lose privacy.
Yes, that's correct. It's just going to be a transparent ERC20, just like any other. So if you want to retain privacy, you bridge back, and then you can, again, reclaim all those anonymous features.
Hold your questions for the end, guys, please.
Dollars, right? So that's just a ratio that is 1-to-1 for anybody who might have been curious about that. But what I would probably want to point people's attention to is the bridge, which, when there is the wrapped ZYS, because it has such appealing yield, if there's any amount of buy pressure on Ethereum for that, because of the way that the liquidity works, and because of the way that it's backed by Zeph, when you purchase it on Ethereum, there has to be a bot system that will basically purchase Zeph to fill the liquidity to keep for, basically good slippage, and to keep the pools maintained so that other people can buy more wrapped ZYS. So the reason I point that out is because the market cap of Zeph is really small right now. And it is kind of like a killer app in that the yield is sustainable, and it's pretty much the best that you can find in all of DeFi. And when you really understand that it actually is sustainable, and you understand why it's sustainable, then you would probably want to get into some of that. And as people start to see, hey, this APY is not going down. And, over the last couple of weeks, it's not gone down, right? Because as soon as it's wrapped, this ZYS on Ethereum, it's going to be basically on DeFi Llama. It could be on all these other platforms. And then people will kind of see that and they'll say, hey, what's this? And then ultimately, maybe they'll buy some. And, they won't have to go to the native wallet to do that. They'll just buy it on their MetaMask or whatever. And simply by buying it has to push the Zeph price higher, because that's how it works. Because of the way that the pool system is going to balance out that buy demand ultimately. And as the Zeph price goes higher, it will sustain the APY, right? So when you really understand that, that's kind of where it kind of clicks, where you're like, okay, Zeph, which is the volatile asset that backs the stablecoin, there's a lot of potential for it to go higher if you believe that people will want to buy wrapped ZYS. And if you believe that that's the case, then Zeph right now is extremely undervalued. And that's kind of the thing I'd want to point people's attention to, because that's actually pretty useful if you're interested in growing your own bag, right? If you want to get more pirate chain, right, then probably getting some ZEPH now before the bridge might be a good idea to, rotate that. So, obviously everybody is interested, like you said at the beginning, in their own project, and we're not going to convince each other. And I think, that's fantastic, right? We all have our own, interests, and, we can have this open conversation. But I think like, if you do really want that privacy or that stable coin, you could always go back to the native chain. And then the other thing I'll say about ZSD, right, is that stable dollars, having cash, having fiat, yeah, it's a medium of exchange. I can maybe buy goods with it and it's a little bit easier, but it's also a form of shorting the market. If you think Bitcoin's going to go lower, you're going to move into a stable and you're going to wait, and then you're going to move back. So ZSD being private is a way of also waiting for the market to go down, and then you can jump back in. So there's, obviously that benefit.
Like a hedge.
Yeah, it's like a hedge, right? And then ZYS, the last thing I'll point out, and then I'll finish, is that ZYS doesn't go down. It never goes down. And MakerDAO, they created a stable coin called DAI, and it's pegged to the US dollar. And they have something called a savings DAI. And they also are Sky Money now, and they have something called USDS. And that's their stable dollar. And then they have savings USDS, which is SUSDS. And you could go, on CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko or whatever, and you can look at those, and you'll see that they only trend up. And if you look at what the APY of those are, it's quite small compared to what ZYS is. ZYS is exactly the same. It's a stable coin that gets yield paid out in stable coins. It can't go down. It can only go up. It's the same exact thing, but it goes up much faster. And so there's a lot that can be built around that on DeFi. So once it's wrapped, then you can do a lot of other things with that. And people, if it does continue to get any attention, people will kind of build around it and add it to their platforms, and then it will grow and grow and grow, and all of that will push ZEPH higher. So that's really the point.
So when it comes to audits, like how does Zephyr balance the need for privacy with the requirement for auditability, in trusting the financial system?
Do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question. Well, maybe I could answer that really quick, right? Because maybe the question is the collateral good, right? And the thing is, it's audited every 2 minutes. The chain has a block every 2 minutes, and then it's posted where you can see exactly how much collateral is backing that stablecoin. So pretty much it has the best auditing system out there. It's mathematically proven, right? It's all in the code, right? You don't have to trust anybody. It's all in the reserve. So you can actually go on the website and check that data.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's the thing with privacy coins, It's hard to verify things.